what we're announcing today really is part and parcel of the city's overall effort to equitably take care of everybody. We've worked very hard to protect our waterfront workers over the last year. We've put in place some of the strictest workplace rules in the country that allowed us, frankly, to avoid the calamities that we saw out in the Midwest and meatpacking plants. We didn't want that to happen to our fish houses, and although we did see some disease spread there, we don't want that to, we were able to avoid it here. Likewise, we pioneered a testing program for our fishing fleet that effectively preempted the virus from getting on board, and so that we could continue to supply America and beyond with the seafood they need. And we've been very proud of that. But now here we are at a point where we've got to evangelize vaccinations. We wanted to make sure that everybody's safe of every age. And so what we're doing today is that we're announcing that this facility, which we still call the EPA facility, we got to give it a new name, will serve as our waterfront vaccination center through the hard work of our health department and through the hard work of our emergency manager, Brian Nobriga, and many others in city government. We're setting this up so that our food workers, our essential employees, our fishermen can get here, can get the shots they need, all in an interest toward, of course, establishing herd immunity, but making sure that they, who work in close proximity to others, are safe, and their families are safe, and everybody they come into contact with will be safe. And so there are a number of folks that I want to thank. Obviously, there are going to be a number of officials that are obviously who are behind me, and I wanted to acknowledge all of them in the course of this short program. But there are some folks here that I want to thank. I mentioned Brian Nobriga, our emergency manager. I want to thank our acting port director, George Krikorian, who's here as well. I want to thank Adrian Ventura. Where's Adrian? Adrian is right there. Adrian, I just really want to thank you for all of your advocacy on behalf of not only just the Guatemalan community in the city, but also all of the plant workers in the city of every ethnicity who need this kind of help. And our goal, our task ahead of us is to make sure that people understand, as you know, you just got your shot, that the vaccines are safe, the vaccines are effective, really effective. The fact that we have those available right now, just roughly a year out from the onset of the pandemic, is a medical miracle. It's it's a miracle of modern science, and we've got to take full advantage of it. And so I appreciate the work that you've done to spread the word about it. And again, I want to thank everybody who was involved in throwing the doors open to this place. We're going to be opening it up on April 10th, so that's 10 days out. Today's March 31st, and so that'll give us an opportunity to get the word out, to get people to understand the opportunity that will be here. So I want to thank, in making this happen, I want to thank our federal delegation, led by our senior senator, Elizabeth Warren, whom you'll hear from in a moment, and our Congressman Bill Keating, and the entire Massachusetts delegation for their hard work over the last year. They've been working in isolation too. They've been scrambling to do everything they can to provide us the resources that we need to keep people safe. And so, Senator and Congressman, thank you for making that happen. All this is paid for with federal dollars, which we really appreciate. But we much prefer not to be paying for it out of New Bedford taxpayer dollars. But we couldn't even do it with local dollars. Responding to the pandemic is an expensive undertaking, and we couldn't do it without the federal support. So with all that, I want to introduce Senator Warren. We appreciate her being here today, not only in helping bring the resources here, but also in championing the needs of everybody who's out there working, just as many of our fishermen and our fish processing workers are. Senator.
So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Congressman, our state delegation. I'm here to celebrate the coming opening of a vaccination center right down on the waterfront in New Bedford. I'm also here to celebrate the partnership between the City of New Bedford, the New Bedford Community Health Center, and the federal government. The Greater New Bedford Community Health Center has partnered up with the city. It has gotten about $3.9 million from the federal government in order to help with the extra expenses during this pandemic and to help make a center like this possible. But most of all, I am here to celebrate the lives of the people who will be made safer by coming here to get their vaccinations. This center is about protecting our essential workers. It is about treating our fishermen with respect. It is about treating our food workers with respect. It is about acknowledging that the work they have been doing on the front lines for the past year during this pandemic has kept our country going. And they have done it often at great risk to themselves and to their families. This center is a way of saying thank you and opening up vaccinations so they are here for the people who have been here for the rest of America over the past year. I am delighted to be able to say that our federal government wants to partner up, and it wants to be here for the workers who have worked so hard on behalf of all of us. So thank you for being here. I think we're going to take some questions, but I'm sure the congressman would like to say a few words first. Bill?
All right. Thank you, Senator, Mr. Mayor, my colleagues in the state legislature. Thank you. Today is a day where I reflected on the word pandemic, and I reflected on the prefix of that word, pan, which one of the definitions I read was everybody is involved. And that's what this is about. This is a combination just not on the government side where the federal government, the state government, the municipal government, our healthcare workers, everyone is involved in this. This has particular significance because we wanted to make sure and advocate and make sure this portion of the state wasn't underserved. We wanted to make sure that certain underserved members of the community were provided access to the extent that we could make it possible. And certainly our frontline workers who are there risking their lives to make sure the economy moves forward as best it can under these conditions and food is on our table for our families, make sure those people are protected as well. So it's a day where we come together as a community. There's more coming. We were briefed just hours ago from the White House on the President's plan for the infrastructure. That is also going to deal with issues like the ones we're involved with here today in terms of not just infrastructure, but the infrastructure that affects people's lives and people's, including frontline workers. So there's more to come. And I would just think this as I was standing here too. The mayor said we have to maybe rename this from the EPA. Perhaps at least during this effort, we could keep those acronyms, but make it rather stand for every person aligned. Because if we're going to beat this virus, we're going to have to beat this together. Thank you.
That's a keeper.
Okay.
All right. So I want to call up two others who have been at the tip of the spear in New Bedford's efforts to address the effects of the pandemic, and that is DAMON CHAPLIN, the city's health director, as well as CHERYL Bartlett, the director of the Greater New Bedford Health Center. Both have been instrumental in enabling us to manage and weather the storm, and they continue to do it, and they'll be instrumental in making this particular facility a success. So, DAMON, you want to come on up, and then CHERYL. They both have served as phone a friends for me in the course of the pandemic. It's been very helpful.
Thank you, Mayor, Congressman, Senator. This is a turning point for us in New Bedford. We finally have a facility and access to vaccines to reach those hard-to-reach populations that we've been talking about for the last year. We actually have an opportunity now to provide resources in a way that we hadn't before. And so this is a huge turning point for New Bedford. So again, I want to thank you all for making this happen for us. We've been talking about for the last year, how do we get ahead of COVID-19? We do that through cooperation, collective impact, and working together. And this is a perfect example of all of those things coming together. And so I really want to be thankful. I want to thank the mayor. I want to thank the congressmen. I want to thank all the folks who've been working with us for the last year. This has been a grind. This has been a grind. We're not done yet. We still have work ahead of us. But like I said, if I'm going to use a sports analogy, we're in the fourth quarter or the end of the third quarter. And so there's light at the end of the tunnel, but we got to keep our foot on the pedal and keep working together. So thank you.
Metaphors coming.
I was going to say.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Senator, for being here, and Congressman, as well as our local delegation. This, I would agree with DAMON. This has been a real grind for us. I will never forget March 10th, 2020, when our world really changed upside down. We at the health center began losing $1 million a week. And I just thought to myself, okay, I think I had $3 million in reserves, and that meant I had 3 weeks I could survive and serve the population here. We serve about 25,000 people in the greater New Bedford area. And so very quickly the feds came forward, and within the first month we got $1 million, sort of no questions asked. And then they quickly allowed us to pivot into telehealth, which we weren't really allowed to see patients in that way and bill for it, particularly here in Massachusetts. And so they passed legislation so that we could immediately begin to switch to telehealth, which was a 2-week process, which actually is one of the silver linings of this epidemic, is we have a new way of serving people who are hard to reach. And so that began to bring revenue back into the health center. And what we realized is we were being paid at about 1/10 or 100th of the rates that we were getting paid. So again, our legislators came forward and mandated that payments would be on parity with coming and seeing people on site. And so that really stabilized the community health centers, which I believe are the backbone of serving this pandemic, because we're serving the most vulnerable and at-risk populations across this nation, but particularly here in this region. And so the work that they did was really critical. So in 2020, we had $4 million that supported us. We got a $3.2 million PPP loan that we just learned would be 100% forgiven. So again, that is keeping the health center alive. And then just this week announced another $3.9 million. So we're really starting to invest now in what are the infrastructure needs that we wouldn't have ever had the resources to do, like our roof that's about to fall apart and an HVAC system that wasn't adequate before the pandemic and we know has to be upgraded in order to continue to serve in an age where we're going to see these kinds of contagious diseases over and over again in a global way. And so the money that our federal legislators and leaders brought to us, as well as our state legislators, has really been critical to the success of the community health center, I think, really being recognized and stabilized as a vital part of our healthcare system here in the region. So I'm enormously grateful. I know that our patients are enormously grateful. We have people coming in getting vaccinated. We've vaccinated about 6,000 people already. And many people come in and cry when they get their first dose. They are just so relieved.
You mean that in a good way.
Right. Yeah, before they get the shot, not after. Is that they're just so happy that there's hope. And so it's really kind of fun to be outside where they're vaccinating people to see that, as DAMON says, we are seeing the end post there where maybe we're going to really move on to a new world. But it has been quite a ride, and it does take a village to get through something like this. So thank you all for what you do, and especially the mayor. His leadership has been tremendous in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. All right. All right. I just one other word. I really do want to recognize the hard work of our state delegation represented here today by Tony Cabral, Chris Hendricks, and Paul Schmid. We've had a recurring call over the course of the pandemic, and the first words out of their mouths are always, "What does the city need?" And so I just want to thank you guys for being there. And I want to thank the New Bedford City Council, represented here today by Ward 3 Councilor Hugh Dunn. We're here right in his ward, and the City Council has been likewise very supportive along the way. So thank you. And before we take questions, I just want to leave you with 4 words. People understand. If there's one takeaway from this entire event, it's this: come and get it. The vaccines are here. We want you to take it. It's going to be good for you and everybody you love. So with that, we'll take some questions.
There was a bounce in your step when your colleague Congressman Keating mentioned the infrastructure.
Yes.
How big a deal is this? I mean, and how are you going to sell this additional surcharge on corporate taxes?
Look, let's start with what's in this infrastructure package. We were briefed just this morning by the White House, and I want to start with one of my favorite parts, and that is the White House has declared something I've been arguing for a long time, and that is childcare is infrastructure. If we want parents to be able to work, then they need childcare. We invest in roads and bridges so people can get to work. We need to invest in childcare so that parents will be able to work, and there's a substantial support for that. This infrastructure package also has money in it for rail in particular, for transportation overall, but I am very hopeful and already scheduled to talk more with the White House about the money that will be set aside so that we can assure that there is phase 2 funding for rail access down the South Coast. So I think this is going to be critical. A third part of what's going to be in infrastructure package will be the part about housing. It's a commitment to build 2 million new housing units across America. This is going to be about affordable housing, but it will also help bring down housing prices, rental prices for everyone. The squeeze on housing has been so tough on working families. So it's a great package. It's got lots of moving parts to it, but mostly what it's about is making the investments in America that we have deferred for so long. It's about stepping up and saying it is time for us to invest in America's future through infrastructure.
And the tax part?
And the tax part is to raise the taxes, corporate taxes, from their current 21% to 28%, a step in the right direction. But I want to note here, there's a second feature in the tax provision, and that is that the president has adopted something I've been arguing for, and that is a tax on real corporate profits, so that it captures folks like Amazon, who paid who made tens of billions of dollars in profits over the past 3 years and paid an effective tax rate of just over 4%. They don't care whether the tax rate, top tax rate is 21% or 28%, because they don't plan to pay anything close to that. So this bill says it's not just about what your taxes are after you've exploited every possible loophole. It's also about paying taxes on your book profits that you report to your investors, you report to the public, and you set corporate CEO pay scales on. So it's about making those who have the most pay a fair share. I'm ready to have that fight.
Senator Warren, I think it's been a bit since we've had you in New Bedford between the pandemic and when you were running for president. We do hear sometimes from voters who say, you know, Senator Warren's such a national figure. Does she really have time to be, you know, focused on Massachusetts, on the communities here, when she's so busy with national issues? What do you say to that?
You know, I have been in this fight alongside Congressman Keating and alongside Senator Markey to make sure that throughout this pandemic, resources were coming right here to this community, to New Bedford, to the region, and to the Commonwealth as a whole. We've worked hard, for example, to make sure that there's adequate money for our community health centers so they could keep their doors open and so that people could continue to receive the medical care that they need. We've worked hard, for example, to make sure that those checks are coming directly into people's hands all across New Bedford and all across the region. Now, each of us has a job to do. The mayor does a wonderful job. Our state legislatures are out there doing hard work. Our job in Washington is to try to get the resources together to help out in a time of crisis, and to try to get the resources in place to make the investments to build a stronger future for this country, to fight for a fair taxing system and also fight for a fair distribution right here in New Bedford. So that's the fight I've been in for 9 years now, since I was elected to the Senate.
Your Massachusetts constituents after being all over the country and everything?
I've been right here, and I feel deeply connected to the people of Massachusetts, and deeply grateful to the people of Massachusetts who took a chance on someone who had never run for public office before back in 2012, who backed me again in 2018 to stay in the United States Senate. I am grateful that they have sent me to Washington to fight on their behalf, and I try to honor their faith in me every single day.
How do people sign up for this site, and who's eligible for it? Is it only going to be waterfront, or please talk a little bit
Great
more
question.
You want to do this one?
Go to the experts.
Let's go to the expert.
Sure.
Noelle.
Let me get out of the way, Noelle. Here.
Oh, thank you. So the best way to sign up for the site is we are broadcasting this out where you can call the health center directly themselves. When we look at certain companies where they're sending a mass amount of their employees here, we have a spreadsheet that we send out where the company themselves are filling out the information, giving it to us directly, and it's all appointment based. And we've had a very high rate of success of people coming, and a very, very low rate of people not showing up by doing it this way. And it really brings the human connection into it, because they're calling the phone lines, they're talking to somebody directly, we're setting the appointment for them, and they're coming.
Could you just give your name and title?
Sure, my name is Noelle KOHLES, and I am the Chief Nursing and Clinical Operations Officer at the Greater New Bedford Community Health Center.
How do you spell it? Spell your last name.
KOHLES.
Thank you.
Like the store, but add an E.
So people are going to call one central phone number that's at the health center, and
That's
they'll
correct.
get an appointment here. Is anyone who meets the state eligibility guidelines eligible to come here, or is it sort of restricted to essential workers and the waterfront workers, or what's the plan for that?
So right now, our focus is on the waterfront workers and those within the community that we're trying to vaccinate. It's really important to get those that aren't able to get vaccinated, that are hard to get to come here. The goal is also, we have Johnson & Johnson that we'll be using on the first date of opening on April 10th, that it gives them the ability to get that one-time shot on the weekend where they don't have the ability to come Monday through Friday.
Mayor, could you just speak to the present situation with the pandemic, the trends on the virus? I mean, we saw things seem to be getting better. Now, there were 500 in Rhode Island today, for example, new cases, which was pretty high.
Yeah.
What's it looking like right now in the city?
Yeah. So, the cases in New Bedford are mirroring the national trends more or less. You know, so we hit our peak on January 4th with 263 cases. As of 2 weeks ago, our 14-day average was about 18, so we had a more than 90% decline. And we had a similar decline in our positive rate as well. Hospitalizations lagged a little, but still declined. And in the last 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks or so, it started to come back up. In the last 5 days or so, we're averaging high 30s, around 40 cases a day. The testing rate's starting to come back up as well. So, yeah, I mean, it just underscores the reality here, which is, and you've heard this from many people, from many other officials, which is there is a race of sorts between the vaccine and the variants now. We presume that some of the new spread is attributable to the UK variant, if not others. And the trick for people is to keep these masks on. You know, I'm going to put it right back on once I'm done here, just for the record. But we need to do that. We need to keep these practices in place so that we hold back the virus in time to allow the vaccines to win the race. And so that's the work we're in right now. We really want to promote the use of the vaccine. Again, I can't say it enough. I'm almost 90 days out from my experience with the disease, so I'll be getting my shot soon enough. And everybody who's gotten it has not regretted it. So we need to spread the word.
I think we have time for one more question. There are at least two groups here locally, the NAACP and the Immigrants Assistance Center, who have said that the vaccine needs to be more available in the neighborhoods, and from physicians that people trust in the neighborhoods, if they may not be able to get to a larger vaccination site. It doesn't seem like this is really addressing that. What is the city doing on that issue?
Well, this precisely addresses that matter. We're bringing yet another clinic in a big building like this in a very prominent place in the midst of the highest concentration of seafood processors anywhere in the United States, if not beyond. We want to make sure that this is all about targeting an underserved population, and a population that is at greater risk than everybody else. So that we are out ahead of that issue more than most places. And we've also had, we started out with mobile vaccination clinics well before anybody else in the state was doing it. We went to all the senior living facilities in the city, frankly, before a lot of those folks were even eligible, because we wanted to get shots in people's arms quickly and do it right where they live. And so, and we're going to be at this effort for a while. COVID's going to be around a long time. It's not going away. What we're trying to do is get our arms around it. And but there will be embers out there for the foreseeable future that we're going to need to identify, trace, and continue with our vaccination efforts, and do it in a very granular way. And that's what we're doing here.
Yeah. Can I add, though, on your question about the federal partnership in this? There are two things in the American Rescue Package that go to the question of making sure that vaccines are available in underserved communities. This is something that I worked on with Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley and Congresswoman Barbara Lee, and that is to make sure, first of all, that there's enough money. There is extra money in the American Rescue Package to reach out at a very granular level down into the communities that have traditionally been underserved, and to hire people locally so that there are trusted officials who can be a part of the vaccination process. The second thing that we argued hard for and got into this rescue package is the ongoing collection of data, so that we will know who gets the vaccines, which communities are fully served and which communities are underserved. Without good data, everyone is flying blind. So this is about collecting good information so that places that are not receiving vaccines in the same density are places that we can double down, quadruple down if we need to, so that our efforts reach every single person. The whole idea here is to get these vaccines to every American, because vaccines save lives.
Which funding stream is that, Senator Warren?
It's part of the American Rescue Package.
Yeah, do you know which of the?
It has its own funding stream. Okay. The whole point is, it's got its own funding stream about medically underserved communities. Good. Are we good?
All right.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Everybody, good to be here. Let's come back.
Thank you.